Hello. Hi. Good evening. Good morning. It's 1 o'clock in the Philippines. I hope you're well. Welcome to the Yellow. And this is the second call. And this is the end of the 10th month. So that just feels quite incredible and exhausting and amazing and whatever else emotion and insight and feeling. Thank you for being here for all of this time. It's such a thing to travel across a whole year of looking at just one thing through so many different ways. I'm really excited about today. I am feeling that it's time to get practical. And I think that's more and more like the sense or the goal. Like, how do we ground this? So today I want to talk about what it means to have a workspace and like a workflow. The workflow. That particular phrase for me speaks a lot, like more and more. Like this year, sorry, I'm in a cafe and it's the only place where I could find strong internet. So if you find the occasional blender or espresso machine, just bear with me. Yeah, this year has been really amazing in finding a workflow, and I want to more or less share my own workspace. Um, and I want to, yeah, invite everyone who has been developing a workspace to share their own. I think this is especially interesting when it comes to something like inner dance, where I think first we look for a playground, and then we play, we roam, we explore freely in very creative means. And for me, my first years, maybe my first decade in the inner dance process is really all about play. It's like, let's just make things up, let's blast off, let's um, really just come from the heart and not have to think about things too much. Um, but the more one progresses, I think the office space starts to come up alongside the study, which is not so much an office space. It's more of a studio. If we looked at the etymology of the studio, it's not just a place of creation. Studio is where you study, like the studio. Um, so I built like my own studio initially for myself. Like I knew I needed a space where I could study, and that space could be in my own room, in my own library. But because I am nomadic, and I think a lot of people right now, we're living in many spaces. Even if we're based in one city, we're constantly moving around. I think it's important and interesting to have a transportable study and a transportable office, especially today, like anywhere we go, we're always studying, like the whole school is the world, and we're always creating as well. You can have your cell phone with you, you can have your work tools with you, and even when you're holding space, there's a kind of schooling and studio space there. Um, for me, the workflow really evolved. If there's one influence as to how it evolved the way it had, was because of the COVID pandemic. Um, because things slowed down so much, I could actually witness something speeding up, like more and more. I literally saw it. I I saw it we had all these people in Maya. We had all these big retreat programs and training programs, and people would be flying in from all around the world. And when the pandemic came, it started to push everyone out, like one by one. Everyone started to book flights, and then people couldn't stay in the island anymore. It wasn't practical. So I remember it just today, in fact, like the last day, like when the last person had left, something happened to my mind. Okay, this is time for something new. Um, I've always loved these in-person trainings, people would come, but I felt that there's something a lot deeper or a lot more expansive that can happen, and it had something to do with the internet. So another insight that I had today, or was it yesterday? I think it was today. I was chatting with Sophie or someone. Um, I really love these online processes because I realized just how much of a solitary person I am. I'm a kind of loner, meaning I need a lot of personal space. And when I'm surrounded by too many people, the more I crave, like, okay, I need my own space now. Don't know what it's like for you. And the online space allowed me to be with more people, but also to allow me to hold like a boundary. Like I felt more alone and I felt more together. Like for me, alone isn't bad thing. I think to be alone is like the most amazing thing often. And you would know this, especially if you have kids. Parents are constantly like negotiating for that alone time. So I love the pandemic for that. And after the pandemic, I felt my solitude increasing more and more and more. And it brought an interiority that allowed for more information to be held, and that then could be shared in a way that many people could see what it is like to travel into inner dance spaces, not in the normal way, not in the workshop space where people would just be exploding and screaming and making noises. And um, it it's not easy to develop like an office and a study when that's constantly happening. Um, so just to share with you, and I think it's important to share this, that when I was young, let's say adolescent, teenage, into my 20s, I knew myself to be a very, very messy person. My room is always like a hurricane, storm, typhoon, disaster, world war. Like I don't know where my things are. It's always like scattered somewhere. And um my room wasn't just like outside me. My internal room was always messy. Yet I somehow loved that. Like I somehow could operate in this really, really messy way. I wasn't entirely happy with it, but I knew that this was the way it was supposed to go. So for me, the spiritual journey was all about taking this messiness to the extreme, because I knew that at the end point of all that mess, all that chaos was in fact patterns and order and like a whole system. So that when you think about something like inner dance, at the first look, it looks really messy. It's like, wow, it's like so much going on. And that's our goal, to make that as wild and as weird as possible. Let's keep going deep. But the more you come into contact with something like inner dance, the more you can see there's order there, there's organization there. Um, I mean, even within the noise and the chaos, what I loved about being in that space is that there's something very on point. My words before used to be like accurate. There's something very accurate about the that flow. There's something super precise, like super duper exact. Even though it looks so super messy, there's something very, very exact. And I think you would realize this when you recognize that it's not me, it's not you, it's not any of us that's organizing these. For me, one main principle in the yellow is that the energy needs to be self-organizing. If I'm organizing it too much, my head actually starts hurting, and then my body would experience all these pains. Like something's off. I'm trying too hard. It's not working out. But the moment I find that self-organizing energy, then all I have to do is I step back and I just watch it. It's doing its own thing. I'm not doing anything. And that could be very productive. Okay. Like prior to that, it would seem like you're just spending time, you're taking up space. But when you think of a forest, or when you think of something like permaculture, for example, it's like how you can, grow a garden. You don't really take care of a real garden. A forest garden system would be a system that takes care of itself. And sometimes even small inputs can generate, like so many outputs. So for me, this is necessary, and I've been working quite hard for quite a while now to develop a system that would be self-organizing. And my passion has actually been to share this with people. I want to share this with people. I want to see people discover this higher order within the chaos. It's like this being in the eye of the storm. I've been really, really passionate about helping people like fix their office, like construct a school. For me, that would be really, really amazing indeed. Um, and that's not organization. I think it starts here. The body is a school, the mind is an office. Okay, so I prepared the PowerPoint in um in Apple terms. It's more called like wait, a a keynote. So I prepared a keynote today, just to help me organize my thoughts because I want to be organized this time. So let me know if you can't find, if you see me presenting and you don't see me projecting the notes, then the slides, I mean, then let me know. And then I'll be drawing on my iPad at the same time. So let me know if you don't see the screen for that one, you can see me drawing things out. Okay, let me just arrange my screen. Cursor's gone. Anyway, workplace study, yellow, form and flow and inner dance. Isn't that, is that great? Like, is that fun? It's, for me, it's all the same thing. The one on the left is one of our workers or staff members working in the school in Palawan, where we're constructing an inner dance curriculum with the Department of Education. So I thought that was appropriate. All right, so the being and the becoming. I wrote some things down, and I don't know if I can remember what these slides mean. But anyway, I was asking this question to myself: how does one speak what one embodies? So this is where language and the biological or the embodied come together. Another question is, how does one embody what one language is? I think this takes time. Embodying what we're learning for that to become like a lived experience, not just something that we're thinking about, that deserves time, right? It needs like to journey over a period. Okay, sorry. Trying to So how does one embody, I think I was asking, how does one embody what one speaks? And language should be something in the blue, but I feel there's something in the yellow that really grounds um, some of these concepts that we're going to be bringing up. Just a moment, one last thing to change. Okay. So this is a structuralism, and we have been talking about this for quite a while. There has to be a change that takes place. And when we think about the body, um, for many eons, we weren't aware that the mind and the body are super directly linked together. The mind and the body were separate. So if you would change your mind, that means that somehow you would also need to change your body. So your brain doesn't probably look the same today as it did last year, and the year before that. But definitely you would have to change the way you language things, because the way you speak is bound to the way you're thinking, because language in a way organizes the unconscious. That is a Lacanian thought. We did bring that up in the orange, and we will bring that up again in the blue. Language is structured like the unconscious. So all of these would be interesting to think about. They're all hip together. They're changing together. So we want to understand how. And today, expression or language isn't really just speech. Normally, when you hear the word language, you're thinking about the spoken word or orality. Somehow, when you bring the internet into things, we're constantly on our phones and we're exposed to dimensions of language that would be ubiquitous or all pervasive, meaning we're permeated by language all the more now. So developing a language that would be so much more appropriately organized to this time would probably help you and the other human beings whom you would touch. Okay. So 2 days ago, I was having a conversation with one of the strong inner dance trainers in Asia. She's from Singapore. And she was listening to this yellow talk where it speak about the theme was more philosophical. It was about knowledge and power. And then, of course, we go into the theories and the philosophies and the sciences. And Fiona sent me a voice note afterwards saying like she needed to work on something, because every time she goes into this inner dance process, what she sees is initially she was exposed to the spiritual element. Like she was so interested as a yoga teacher, as a Reiki healer, and so on and so forth. Like for her, inner dance is spiritual. But more and more, when she went into the inner dance space, she saw that it was very, very science based. So the thing that she was working on is because she had just come from a yoga training, and her teacher had stated very, very simply that science doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean much. It doesn't hold answers, and it's better to not think about it, to cancel it out. It's not a truth-bearing domain. Um, so she was kind of confused by that because, like as a pilgrim, um, it's very easy to do this. It's very easy. It's very easy to cancel that out. You're probably not one to cancel this out the fact that you're here, the fact that you're still here. Um, for me, as a Filipino, okay, let's just say I'm from this country that had been indoctrinated through colonization and through history, like religion that brings about this understanding or this belief that this guy knows everything. So don't really use any of this. Don't think about it. Maybe you can use it for business, maybe for like economics, but more or less like this one knows everything, and you really shouldn't think too much. Otherwise, your head is gonna hurt, and so on and so forth. So for me, like power, knowledge systems becomes quite skewed when people don't really know how to think for themselves. So when I was coming from my inner dance space, I want to really admit to you that my mind was very, very empty, I would say. Like there was a lot of energy flow in my system. And I that really, really felt good. But because I was living in the world, like speaking to people, and also walking around the world space, um things weren't clear. Energetically, it feels amazing to be in an energetic space, but when one cannot actually translate the energy into thoughts, like clear, coherent thoughts, thoughts beyond my own thoughts, like global thought. It's one thing to get in touch with one's heart, but what does it mean to, in fact, get in touch with one's mind? Okay, this is a brain. It's the best I can do. Um, how what does it mean to get in touch with one's own thoughts? Like feelings, yes, but are you in touch with your own thoughts? And somehow I felt that they were not like separate from each other. They were interlinked. So um for me, the energy was meant to grow. And when I was listening to these questions, my Fiona, I'm very, very aware as someone who lives in the East, uh, huge differentiations between regions of the world, because I do spend a lot, if not actually most of my time with this section. I'm in conversation with the section. Most of my friends are coming from all around rather than from here. And I carry this in my body. So when I think about spirituality in the sense, like a, a, a lot of these guys are headed towards here, emptying the mind, getting in touch with feelings, finding one's heart. And yet, I think I am an interesting person in a way that I belong here, and my awakening heads here. Meaning, people from here, they take our yoga, the yoga from the region, take the inner dance, the shamanisms, the plant medicines, and take those terms and bring it back home. But then me on my part, it's like I have that already embedded in me. Like I have that sense of orality. I have that level of consciousness. So for me to actually awaken, I would awaken into the other space. So I think it should be interesting for you guys to take an inner dance, and instead of languaging it using yogic terminologies, if Westerners are allowed to borrow our yogas and our shamanisms and whatnot, our tantra and so on and so forth, I think we're allowed to borrow some of your sciences and philosophies in a way that we might be able to translate some of these from a very, very nonlinear Asiatic ground. Okay, so that there might be some new science and new philosophies, new theories that can come about. So I grew up in this transition space. And my main concern around this power knowledge element is, if I was to believe in this guru or this teacher that Fiona was like representing, that means that I would not be in this conversation, because if I am meant to still more or less like take this away, it's all about power and energy and life force and energy and life force and power and so on and so forth. We wouldn't see eye to eye. We wouldn't actually share the change that's happening in the body, in the language, and in the mind. So I would say, okay, I've been at it for in this process, I've been at it for about this long, 18 years, 17, 18, 19, depending on how I measure it, when things started for me. So that's a long time. And I think my first 10 years were probably all about energy. And then within those 10 years, I think maybe in the first 7 or 8 years, there were words that started to come that were not my words. They were the words of the energy. But this energy was also the world. No, let's just put the letter there because that's easier. It was still the world's language that was speaking through me. I didn't think it was my subjective language. It was the world language speaking through me. And more and more like this started to stabilize, because you can only imagine what my high inner dance body might have looked like in the beginning. It was like really raw and wild. It was wild. It was hard to be in my body. So I realized later on I deserve this as well. And I think the best way to get to that is just to have your own kids. But also it took work. And for me, the journey has really been that. Okay. Um, so a lot of what I have to share isn't really just coming from what I've studied. It's the energy itself, like undergoing a process of growth. The information grows onto its own, and my devotion is to how is the entity itself, like that which is sentient, that which holds intelligent design, the ID, the id. How is it growing? Like, what is it inputting? And I make it like I stress that it needs to be the global space. It cannot just be coming from one part of the world. Like that we're all in this together. We're all growing together. So I feel then that the science and the philosophies are important in this sense. Maybe we can redefine what we mean by science so that we're not, there still could be a common agreement. Maybe when people say science, they're referring to, let's say, Darwinian science or Newtonian science, or Aristotelian logic, or you might be speaking about Euclidean geometry, all of which are three-dimensional causal deterministic ways that have already actually evolved. So maybe science could be something else, like altogether. But one main difference that I would love to bring up more and more in the blue is the East is known to be holding a synchronic function, as opposed to the West, which is a diachronic function. In structuralism, synchronic is that which doesn't really change over time, that where you to try to understand a part of a story or a concept, there are certain immutable things that don't change over time. They're kind of conservative in that way. So when you think of religion, let's say Buddhism or Christianity, the tenets, the law, the structure doesn't really change over the years. It's supposed to stay the same. So when you do look at something like science and also philosophy, there is evolution at work, and that for me, it's definitely a yellow topic. So we're accounting for these, and when we bring up like for example, technology, media, these seem to not have anything to do with spirit and energy. Like in days past, when you look at inner dance, it's something quite interesting to look at. What would deepen this exchange should be to think about the brain. You know, is the brain a synchronic or a diachronic uh, like thing? You know, like a object, like our intelligence. You know, is it changing over time? Do we have the same brain now as we did 100 years ago, let alone like a million years ago? Or does it actually, does it look different? So I guess when you take up energy or yoga, you have to take this into account. If we're going to come up with these knowledge claims that science doesn't matter, it means you've already taken a stand that more or less you are going for a synchronic function. But when you do work within the world, especially like these parts of the world, and this part is becoming very, very much like this part when you think of places like China and India, and so on and so forth. Even Bhutan is becoming more and more Western, and Sri Lanka and Nepal. We're needing to account for this somehow. So if this is spiritual, then spirituality itself is an evolutionary space. And like when you go into a biblical reading of this, then if you remember the book of Exodus, in the Old Testament in the Bible, there was this point there where Moses was speaking to this um, burning tree, the burning bush. There was a plant that was burning, and he was asking this, who are you? What is your name? And the name this gave was, when it introduced itself, it says like, I am who I am. But what's interesting is when you read the Aramaic translation of the word, it actually meant I am the becoming. I am becoming. So in the sense, we think that this is a sentient, static, unchanging thing. But what if this thing that people, like kneel down to, put their hands together, do a sign of the cross, what if this was a process? It wouldn't that change uh, things, like is it unchanging, or is it actually a journey? It, he, she is actually um, this itself. That's a paradigm that would utterly change stasis itself. Like, what if, what if that was something becoming, like always becoming in for infinity? It will never get there, and that's actually the joy. That would liberate, that would free up, that would also make fun. So that's my answer to that question. Like, get rid of science. Science is actually that which is diachronic. It's an evolution of the mind, of the metacognition, of consciousness becoming self-conscious. And in that sense, science is also a spirituality. And I feel, if we were to, yeah, get rid of this, or you might call it wisdom, intelligence, that's a cognitive dissonance. Like here in my country, when we are taught about these things, and then we have to go to school and study this, there is a dissonance, there is a disagreement. Like the truths that exist within this are not in a consensus with this. So that's what I mean about, what does it mean to embody the change. There's a structuralism. Every single word or sentence, every experience that you input into your container, yourself, would transform you. That is a new understanding of linguistic that is structural. Okay. that when you are speaking to someone, that person is changing you. Even right now, this conversation is moving things around in your room, your office space, your school. All right, so back to the keynote. Mind body extended. The extended mind is oh, sorry, no. Yeah, so the extended mind is a theory in the cognitive sciences that the the body is a lot bigger than just, what's contained in underneath your skin. Your body extends to your iPhone, your room, your mom, your everywhere you go is now part of your mind. Like we need to build an understanding of the extended brain. And in that sense, the body is like the body we normally think is the medium, and then the mind is the message. But I think it's actually the other way around in an inner dance formulation. I think the body is actually the message. If we understood the body as a network of information, the mind is actually the medium. And um, the second one, especially, depending on the medium that you're operating in, which is also a dimension, the message would entirely shift. But the, firstly, like you express what you are what you're becoming. You're becoming what you're experiencing, and what you're creating is what you express. I think there's a loop here. Um, if you don't change your expression and you're trying to change your mind, if you are also trying to change the experience without understanding your own body and brain are shifting, it doesn't really work out. Like when you conduct a training, a retreat, facilitation process, all of these must be changing at the same time, right? When you hold an immersion, when you hold people in that change space, they all need to be changing. The perception, the expression, and the experience all need to be changed. So sometimes an experience would come and that would change your mind because, wow, okay, the world is different. But it's very easy to retain the old mentality even as you experience something big. And that's when not enough knowledge is being provided. You're being emptied out. You keep looping in the same emotion, energy, explosion, and so on and so forth. But if the belief structure isn't being seen, not just the subjective, it could be the objective, the structural, the philosophical, that which is shared. Is there really change happening? Because what you're perceiving would still influence what you become. And when you're not in that energy space, something will sustain, maybe even get inflated somehow. So, okay, what does it mean to hold a space? Um, Told you I came from a very messy background. For me, I've always been looking for what is an insight. And okay, this deserves a drawing. Okay, what is an insight? And this could be relatable to the last call that we held 2 days ago or a day and a half ago. I would love for you to watch that. Please watch the first call because I'm not bringing up the philosophies today. What is an insight? I will explain a little bit from that call. We talked about the Hegelian triadic relationship between the synthesis. Sorry, I keep making that mistake. The thesis, which could be a certain idea or belief structure, certain paradigm. And um, against that would come up a contradiction. Like every time you have a particular thought, you would evoke the opposition. And there would be a conversation or kind of dialectic whether it be a social dialectic or a materialist dialectic, of which Marx is about, it be an energetic dialectic, monetary dialectic. And when they come into an agreement, there would be a synthesis. And then if this just kept going, where the synthesis becomes another thesis to evoke another antithesis, antithesis, depending on where you're speaking that from, there would be another synthesis. So I think in Hegel, this uh, this should be here. This helps us to understand this very positive view of the yellow, that we're always, in fact, no matter what, evolving. Like even when, when I hear people speak about, okay, I'm going through a dark night of the soul, it's really, really messy, ugly space. Um, what Hegel brings us as the philosopher of history, he's giving us an account of how eternal consciousness comes into the world to work this out, this process of remembering through forgetting, this constant, ever going higher. Everything's always going to get better. Like even when we regress, we are always progressing. I think this is the way to see the yellow. Like for us to hold the yellow for others in the healing environment when we're listening to the stagnation, the lack of creativity, this a lack of self-efficacy, the statements people state that I don't have enough power, I can't do it, I'm too weak, I feel obliged to do it, I'm forced to do it, I don't feel free. To shift that, there has to be this belief that carries that forward. And it's for me the statement that no matter what, however dark, however heavy, however bad, um, there's something about the brain's design that always synthesizes it if in the right conditions, right? Um, in the right conditions. So yeah, I think that's what it means to hold a space. Like it's to hold some kind of insight. And when you experience the evolution through the process of involution, evolution is normally going up. Involution would be that which goes down, and inner dance is very much dropping in, going deep. That the lower you go, the higher things kind of get. But what would be this thing? So when you do look at this from an Egyptian space, the eye in the triangle, the eye of Horus, even in the Philippines, this is a sacred symbol. We're climbing the mountain, not with our hands, with our feet, not with our spleen, our pancreas, not with our livers. We're climbing it through the eye of perception, right? We are climbing the mountain through illumination. This is the work that we're doing. Like no matter how hard it gets, we are bringing things together. Like no matter what, especially in fact, the weirder it gets when you encounter your nemesis, your enemy. Your enemy might actually be your best friend. And then the more these guys stop fighting, we realize there's really just this what it might look like is this just endless like ever going forward. And maybe make this like no, it's confusing, but make this like smaller. There are these microcosms of triangles ever moving forward. And somehow that needs to be accounted for later on as well. Going down, going up. Life is the universe is maybe made up of all these merkabas, these space time, light dark, hot cold relationships becoming one with each other. Um, so yeah, for me that's what it means to hold space. And when we get stuck with believing that we're really just one of, oops, we're really just one of these rather than everything is holding potentially all of these, like every word that you speak is part of the universe. Every day, every room is actually the universe speaking to itself, finding that homeostatic balancing act between these two triangles, either the chalice or the pyramid. Um, what inner dance does, ironically, in regards to the eye and the triangle, it both disrupts, it discontinues the ongoing process that's somewhat personal and subjective. And the reason for that disruption is to, let's say you have a circle, and all of these points in the circle are all Merkabas. They're all these Star of Davids. They're these two triangles. What that disruption brings is some larger continuity. So me, for example, as a dad, like I've got my kids, and I'm always having to take them to class. I have to um like wash someone's butt because she just pooped. Um, help someone with their homework and whatnot. I'm always being disrupted, but because I was taking care of the kids, but I always had to do these inner dance trainings all the while through the years. So let's say the last 10 years or so, 12 years. I always had to go to these, and then I had to keep coming back to these. No matter what happened, even as I kept going into these disruptions in regards to workshops, always like some kind of continuity would come up. Like something much, much bigger emerges when the small thing stops, is what I want to say. I guess that's what people mean when they talk about the ego, the mind, or even science. Maybe they're looking at it from the small space. But then when there's this much larger space, for me, this is what I'm interested in. Like, what doesn't shut off? Even when something shuts down, something doesn't shut off. And I'm largely interested in that. So no matter what I'm doing, I might be like eating, I might be having conversations with 10 people. Um, I might be going shopping. I might be riding my motorbike. I might be in the bathroom, like taking a bath, shampooing or something. Um, what's happening is there needs to be this ongoing energy conservation, which started from an energy conservation. Like when I was in my solitude, I was experiencing energy conservation. When I am in the world, what I see is there's a lot of consumption and there's a lot of competition because we're always hungry. um, but the more you go into energy conservation, when you're not in competition and when you're not just eating the world, um, the energy starts to speak to itself, and you can find the synonym for that, like it's the universe that's having a conversation with itself. So when I'm talking to anyone, it could even be Italy, my partner, it could be my kids, it could be our local team members, it could be anyone. The energy doesn't stop talking. Like everything that they're saying, I can see, okay, that's actually metaphorically speaking from a much, much deeper space. Things are never what they are. They're always something deeper. They're never what they seem. So I would love to bring an inner dance for people that's not disruptive, whatever you call it, a kundalini, an energy something, something. I would love for people to discover an energy process that's not disruptive, but progressive and organizing and very, very productive as a forest would. So for me, that answers the question, like what is an insight and what is it that doesn't lose continuity, and how does an inner dance brain function? Especially that last one, I think that's quite interesting to think about. Now, there is a current age, and it's called the postmodern age. I would say we're actually leaving the postmodern age. We're coming into the post-post. So post means what came after modernism. And when you think about my example of living on the island without access to anything modern, inner dance is a postmodern movement. But when I came back to the world, I experienced what came after, and that's called post-post. It's an actual term in the philosophies that looks at a worldview emerging. Postmodernism is very reactive. It can somewhat be messy and angry. So when we're done with the reaction against the colonizers, against the abusers, postmodernism is kind of reactive in that way, then we heal. It's like, okay, let's talk to each other now. Let's see eye to eye and let's move on. But nonetheless, there is a postmodern thinking process, and there's an amazing book that I would bring up now to help explain this. It's called A Thousand Plateaus by Félix Guattari and Gilles Deleuze, some French political philosophers that gave us a decentered thought system. So at the right, you see the mushroom. Basically, what that is, it's the rhizome. So I want to talk to you about the rhizome. And there's an amazing concept in education called rhizomatic learning. So right now, we're not studying the same way as we did when we went to school. We're studying as a rhizome would operate. Okay, so let's try to see what a rhizome is. So when you look at a tree, it's very clear how things are organized. Like at the bottom, you would have the roots, and here you would have things that branch out. And this is what you might consider the modern. There's a very clear sense of oops, the there's a very clear sense of the middle, like the heart. There's a middle, there's a core. And here you might think of this as the past, the deep, the earth, and here you might think of the sky and looking forward to the future. So something's happening to the world. We're entering the rhizomatic space. So a rhizome could be, let's say, the mushroom, the ginger root, the garlic, the crabgrass, running bamboo. It's basically a plant system. So let's say this is a fruit of a plant. It could be ginger, and then it evolves not usually vertically. It's a horizontal growth mechanism, and there's an unclear, decentered space of growth where you don't really know what's in the middle. There's no trunk because somehow the root, the branch, the actual trunk and the fruit itself are the same. You know, when you look at yeah, when you look at ginger or turmeric, like the root is also the branch and it's also the trunk. And so we're entering more or less a rhizomatic world where you're not sure anymore what is the middle. Like everything seems to be a middle, and the middle is like an ongoing space. So the world is being decentered. There are no more spaces where there can be only one guru or teacher or boss or worldview. Like when you try to study postmodernism, postmodernism was a reaction to the meta narratives of the time. All of the isms, whether it be Buddhism or capitalism or a socialism or uh, any of the isms that promise that we have the answer, we have the overarching truth, like because they didn't work and there was so much dissatisfaction, there was so much um states of alienation and energy descent and we really just didn't reach the promised land, the paradise that was supposedly at our reach. There had to be a reactivity to that. So that's post to the modern, and it was a reaction to the meta narrative. So there's a question now then, like within a rhizomatic space, would there still be a chance of a meta narrative? That's a very, very big question indeed. For me, that's a post question. And for me, there still should be such a thing. A narrative as a story. And so when I conduct conversations within Inner Dance, I don't really stay within one of the meta narratives. I don't borrow from one particular story. What I'm interested in is the story that tells all the stories. For me, I'm interested in the story of all stories. And so when I convey information, you might understand now, why does he talk about these things? It's because I don't like shopping around for who's now the better teacher, or what is now the those are still meta narrativizing truths. I'm more interested in a meta narrative where post coloniality, postmodern, I would be interested in where the whole world is writing the story together, right? Kind of United Nations approach. And because the UN already does exist, I wish to believe that somehow in the energy itself, the so-called bubble, we are in some kind of a meeting. We're actually meeting with each other. This kind of UN Grand Assembly where, and I would like to call that the every time we go there, I think we're having a meeting, like the part is meeting with the whole, and so on and so forth. So when you do go into the journey state, that state of consciousness is all of us coming into a one meeting. It's like, okay, what went wrong, dudes, and you guys, and where do we take this? What is the project? And we have to maybe go back to the beginning, to the source, to the origin, and maybe let's see, where are we going? Even after I'm done with my own name and my own incarnation, I'm going to be born again. What is the project? What is the meeting room, right? Because I feel there is still a chance, and I think it's worth it. I think we deserve that chance, and to experience it, and then to become aware of it, not just to feel it, but also to become it in pure conscious, not subconscious, not like bypassing. We are writing the story together. So when you do hold a space, whether it be experiential or knowledge filled, everything that you share, even in the beginning of the journey, the 10 minutes that you have to open the space, you're already constructing a meta narrative that they would dive into um, later on. All right. So um, no, yeah. So okay. So rhizomatic education is a new education system. I pulled my 14-year-old son out of the schooling system, like about 2 to 3 months ago. Is to finally convince his mother to bring him into a rhizomatic education system. So right now I am his teacher in a way that my teaching is that he is his own teacher. And in the age of the internet, there's a lot more knowledge outside of the school classroom than inside. So he's self-learning. Like in the past 2 months, he's learned how to code. He's learned how to use digital audio workstations. He's learning music theory. He's learning game design. He's probably learned more in the last 2 months than he's learned in the last like 10 years. I don't know. Like that's quite a lot to say, but he's teaching himself because he got freed up from a very linear, three-dimensional, deterministic causal learning process. For me, that's inner dance in the schooling system. All right. One more thing, one last thing here. Like rhizomatic approach is interesting. No, let me do that when the pen is there again. All right. So when you are a facilitator, space holder, guide, uh, like teacher healer, some people would like to use that. It's very difficult to find like a starting and ending in the space because even if you go through 10 journeys, they will never be the same. And if you ask someone to start sharing their own story, that is just going to keep going and going and going. So it's quite a big task to hold all the stories intact. What does it mean for someone to be heard? But when you are connected with 1,000 to 1,000,000 people, how would you listen to all those stories? Right? So as you can see, the way I hold my study space, like I'm interested in what is the universal, what is that which would be relevant to everyone, including me, so that if I'm going to be spending energy in it, um, it would still be um, like for me, that's the heart. What is the heart anyway? This might be you, or this might be me, this might be someone else altogether, whatever the case, let's say this is you, the red is you, and then this could be like whatever. It could be your mom, could be an ant crawling in your room. It could be like your phone. It could be like an object in your room. It could be like your your best friend. It could be your teacher in school. For me, that is the heart. What is the no, let's say let's look for red and blue is indigo. What is the heart? For me, the heart is these two directionalities or movements meeting with each other. For me, the heart is basically the heart of all things. So it could be like the heart of an aardvark. I think an aardvark would be the first word that you'd find in the dictionaries is to ace all the way to whatever is said. Um, I think the heart is where your heart meets everyone's hearts. And that would be the vesica Pisces, the space in the middle. So that when you speak, would you resonate? Because what you're speaking is common, it's shared, and it's not just like a whole bunch of details is coming from your own, like who would have time for that? So when you find a way to hold the heart, it means that when you speak to 10 people all at the same time, what they would say is, oh, wow, it's speaking to me. How could it be? Like when I touching, when he's touching, it's like I'm being, it's me, he's touching. No, like what you're developing is a way to hold the actual heart. So when you apply this to a study space, when you ride the endless train of thought, or you swim the sea of stories, or you climb the mountain of the mind, especially when you're holding several cultures, and I do believe in many places, in most places in the world, it's never going to be one culture. You might be in Mexico, it might be in Poland, you might be, but the people around you are all coming from everywhere. And if they're coming from that one culture, they just came from somewhere. So, holding, yeah, an interculturality is going to become more and more difficult as you scale the work that you do. So structuralism is important. And here's where I can only explain so much how I started from an inner dance space and it got to all these knowledge models that we're working with. Like one way to approach that would be when you're journeying, what would be the questions that initially comes up? And it's like purely relevant to think about this on your own. Like, what are my questions? But this becomes all the more powerful and exciting when you're holding the space and people do go deep. What are their questions? Like, what are they asking? Beyond like, who am I? Like, where did I come from? Like, what is the meaning of all this? Where does this all go? Understanding the questions would help you to hold bodies really well. So starting with my own questions, in the work that I was doing, which later on would be the work that we were doing, something about music, something about the mind, something about emotions. And then later on, there would be something that goes up and goes down. So because I was more or less like this thingness right here. When this is growing and this is starting to take notice of all these, um, like this is the growth part. I studied, and when I say I, like this is the I, you know, I studied. This thing kept growing, and uh, it was studying itself basically. Like everything that I teach or share came from that practice itself, but in conjunction with the world, the life world, the Heideggerian life world. And the energy could definitely absorb information when it's the energy that's the one studying. So I basically went into a train of thought. Like I started with wanting to understand the unconscious because I was tapping into that. Then I went into Lacanian thought. I studied Jacques Lacan. And he came up, and that led me interestingly. I want to share something very, very interesting and weird. You might find this weird. I came upon this coursework. It's this specific guy. Like for me, he's my teacher. Like, it's nothing to do with the sort of work that we do. He was holding a course in Yale that was recorded on an introduction to literature. Now, how would this at all be relevant to conducting trainings in the inner dance? Why would this eventually become the most listened to um, domain of thinking that would carry me through all the years? Okay, his introduction to literature was, I think, about 22 courses. So here you have um, Paul Fry talking for maybe 50 minutes to an hour about literature. And I would literally would like in my trainings, I would listen to hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of this guy nonstop as I was, holding bodies exploding, crying, screaming, laughing. Each of these courses were an introduction to the story of the world as it was expressed in the written word. So he was giving a compendium of each history, whether it be um, socialist history, it would be a history of colonization, feminism, it might be a history of hermeneutics, structuralism. So I basically was able to map out the history of mankind within a specific medium, which is the literate medium, which is the recorded medium. Anything before the age of writing is in the past considered prehistory. So I was able to look at the history of the mind, and I went into all of these tangents. Understanding structuralism is the conjoining of different domains, whether it be the study of the mind, which is psychology, the study of culture, which is anthropology, the study of the anthropos, the study of spirit, which is philosophy, not just the Western. It would also be the study of the brain, which is the neurological, and then it would study the history of language itself, which is linguistics. And you could just keep going on and on. That's what structuralism is. When all of these stories start to meet together, for me, spirituality, as many people know it, would be the energy thing, the energy experience or devotion and what have you. For me, that is really becoming space. And when you take into account the historical, you're taking account time. You're taking in the diachronic or the evolutionary. So these more or less evolve and involve each other. Um, so the more you go into this, the more a structuralism would happen if you are going into a kind of Hegelian dialectic. So So this is my teacher. I'm going to share with you. This is my secret. Like I grew up within the complex because I was coming into the super duper simple, but I was interested in the in depth, the super deep, cavernous, so I was coming up with this admission that when I was in my initial inner dance teaching space, I couldn't actually speak. I didn't have this. I would speak through music. So when you listen to me speak, it might seem like I've been speaking like this forever. I could never speak. Even when I was younger, I could never ever speak. I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a voice, and I also didn't have a personal philosophy. I didn't understand the world. I was really just in this messy state. I was just confused. So I actually found my own voice and my own mind with inner dance. I want to share this with you as holding possible relevance that inner dance holds growth, not personal growth, but global growth within the person. Initially, I was saying I grew with this and I saw the energetic patterns in what goes up and goes down. And the thing is, when I studied, I could retain like things. I wasn't forgetting them as I used to when I was in school. Like the energy was getting used. Like if I fired up my brain, it would be a super brain and I would be able to use it. Um, so yeah, I performed like a structuralist, and this is what I mean. And so within the structuralism, do you know what I studied? I studied I studied everything because you know what's contained in the energy. It's everything. A lot of people might prefer that. You could have that as well. It's really up to you. It's like, I went into nothing and I should just be empty and I shouldn't be allowed to ask questions and I should just, language doesn't work. The mind is evil. It's not gonna get us anywhere. I decided to take a course, a specific pathway because of my own past of having my mind colonized and me being like just super duper unclear. So I think this would heal a certain element inside people. Like one of the biggest fears there is I don't want to study because there's a lack, there's a very, very big lack. I don't have that. I don't have the time. Let's say I'm too old already. This doesn't mean anything. um I'm going to die one day, but what if that was actually healing to grow, to in fact create this resonance point between the self, and we'll go over this more so in the green. What if that was the gift, to validate, to not invalidate the diachronic, to validate time, to validate the history of the world that you chose to be in, means there will always be enough. A lot of people were going for wealth creation. It's about, like the metaphor of time is money. It's like, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough wealth, need to accumulate that. But you know that adage, that metaphor, time is money. And when you have a lot of time, that is going to come because the true wealth is that. So I believe that a lot of people have a hard time in the study process, even the ones coming to our courses. People are in a hurry. They want to bunch things up into like one day. I want to learn everything in a day. Oh, I want to take it all in like 5 days. Give me like a master class in 1 hour, and then I'll walk away. I know everything already. That's not what we're doing here. I think we're here because, as we well know, like I think if this got redefined to this, then that's a process. It's a change system, not like a being. It's a becoming. All right. So you will as well be introduced into a structuralism and a post-structuralism, post-structuralism. And my passion is to not have you spend 20 years to get to taking as much in about everything, like what would be the most useful. So each hour and a half or 2 hours that you allow me to speak, it's where the points at least come together in some kind of coherence, correspondence, and consensus within the very particular topic that we're speaking about, which is in this case like inner dance. So before we go into the practical, and we're about to get there, I want to introduce McLuhan's tetrad. Um, McLuhan is a media theorist that we will be discussing in the green and in the blue, but we did discuss him in the orange. We're again discussing him in the yellow. Some people say McLuhan is the theorist of everything because I do believe media is dimension and the mind has a history of dimensionality. So that when we speak about different mediums of thought, whether it be books, speech, energy, internet, mind evolves inside and outside, and these technologies are mirrors of what's happening inside. So there are four aspects of the tetrad. So I want to think about inner dance as a medium. Here, the example would be that of the radio. So there is an evolution of mediumship. Let me do a board on this first before we go too deep into the tetrad. I've been wanting to bring up the tetrad for a while now. So maybe speech or orality predates what came after the written word. Let's say we were discovering oral tradition, and then we started to write things down initially through the clay writings. Actually, it began with clay tokens, and then this would evolve to the um, papyrus in Egypt. And then we started to write on dead animal skins, which is the parchment. And then we would move into the discovery of paper. And then we would move into the age of the printing press, the Gutenberg invention. And then we would move into, um, yeah, maybe the radio and maybe television and maybe the World Wide Web. And I feel that the energy states people enter into is a kind of medium as well. It evolves. Um, for me, there is a communication process still happening there. So that actually brings us back to where we started. So the tetrad tries to understand that as we move from one dimension to another, what would be an observation of that change when something replaces the previous? Um, there is a movement, and the tetrad brings observation to that. So I want to discuss inner dance with the tetrad. But initially, like the radio, for example, amplifies news in print via sound. So something is enhanced. Initially, there's like an enhancement. Um, when there's this progression. Oops, sorry. Uh, yeah. So what does inner dance amplify? Okay, let me ask you, so that people can volunteer. What does inner dance amplify? Uh, okay, maybe because of time, I would just maybe lead the possibility, and during the Q&A, we can see what you think. The inner dance enhances or amplifies the subconscious, whether it be emotional, physical, and mental states that were previously unconscious. So it enhances our access of the unconscious, that unconscious. The inner dance enhances the REM state it elongates, it extends the REM state, especially experiencing that in the conscious, um, bringing what was previously called the psychedelic, the intuitive, and the weird into the normal. So it enhances strangeness and intuition and the psychedelic phenomena and brings that into the normal. Okay, so that's for me enhancement in the inner dance. Whenever there's new media as well, there's an obsolescence. The new medium drives out the old medium. So what was prominent before inner dance would probably be the question. Um, so obsolescence, obsolescence. Okay. What does inner dance make obsolete or at least makes less? For me, inner dance drives out instruction-based, step-by-step approaches that tend to limit the nature of experiences within expected outcomes. There's like an agenda or an outcome. And let's say you're doing your yoga, you're doing your tai chi, your qigong. There are very, very careful steps like asana, careful movements. Um, and then the thing that you're going to get, whether it be like high energy, clarity, strength, you know what you get. You know what you're gonna get. So that means like inner dance is probably like a box of chocolates, if you know what that Forrest Gump phraseology means. Um, so that's a way to approach inner dance through the tetrad in the second sense. Third would be that there would be a retrieval. What the medium would recover something that was lost from a previous time. So, for example, if the age of print was highly focused, you remember print predates radio, so print would be very linear and it wouldn't be very conversational, meaning the speaker speaks to a mass audience and you can't speak back to the radio host. But radio at least brings the spoken word that is missing in the age of print and in the age of book-based learning, right? So let's look at this from an inner dance space. What does inner dance retrieve? All right. I feel inner dance brings remembrance to early stages of development and evolution. So it brings about the baby state. We retrieve the toddler brain or the baby brain or even the fetus brain. We go back into the womb as we do perceive that in the linguistic, motoric, emotional, and mental functions that are very baby-like in the inner dance experience. All right. So lastly, um, there's the reversal. So this is interesting. Um, when the medium is pushed to its limits, like how far could it go, then it would need to undergo another evolution. So acoustic radio flips into a audiovisual TV in the inner dance. What is the reversal? So let's say you're thinking about inner dance or Kundalini that's like intense. Like wow, it's really intense, meaning we're pushing it to the limit. So for this one, we've already seen what happens when people go into the intense. Because you are here, you are in the inner intensive. Then when you push the limits of energy to the max, what would be born is wisdom. So what you used to call it, say, okay, I'm thinking too much. My mind is, like this monkey brain. When you shut that down, then that's pushing things to the limit, right? Energy and experience, heart. But then you would actually experience a reversal of that. The more you go intense, the more you would look for the intensive. So that's something coming out of you. Then that's something that you can hold in the space of intensity. It's okay that people keep going into the weird. There's a heightened intelligence that would later come out of that because people are, increasing their brain state activity anyhow. All right, so that's enough introduction. At least we could go into the more practical now. I want to share the workspace or the workflow of inner dance, or at least mine, as someone who's been holding so many trainings over the past. Like, what do I hold in my studio? Remember, like, my passion is to help you find your own office space, like your own workspace. So I feel that if we find this work important, it's important to invest. Sometimes that would translate as resources, like actually like money, but sometimes that could translate as time. And when I started this work, I really didn't have any money. For many years, I didn't even have a bank account. In the pandemic, I was so broke. And then I started to hold space again. And through the little that I earned, I invested in a laptop. And then I invested in some musical instruments until the work itself paved the way. The work created itself. So now I'm pretty much, I have everything that I need in order to organize the space for the audience that I choose, which is a global audience. Um, so I think it's very, very important to go into platforms that are shared between um, all of what you would use. So, like, if I was to give advice, I believe that the facilitator's main tool should be an iPad, a tablet, but an iPad, I think, has been the most helpful for me when you construct music, and you can even create or produce music off it. If you haven't like really invested yet, like, I feel an iPad is the way to go, and I'll show you my iPad. I mean, you've been looking at my iPad for a while now, but I wanna show at least my workspace or my workflow through that. Um, and I think if you're going to have multiple platforms, it's very important to allow them to speak to each other. So right now, while I'm speaking to you, I have an extended screen. I have an iPad on. I have my phone on, and I'm on my MacBook. Um, because I'm doing a Logic Pro demonstration from my iPad. I'm using my MacBook because there's a screen share problem with just the iPad and Logic, but I can usually get by just on my iPad and on the extended screen, and which is another monitor, and a maybe an iPhone at worst. Sometimes I can get by with two things. But I basically work with many platforms because I work with several programs to help me think properly. Like when I store information, each particular platform is a dimension. So when we talk about software, that's probably going to become more apparent. Um, we work in Maya with EEGs, primarily because we don't just work in spiritual spaces. We work with schools. So we teach our team members how to operate the EEGs to read the brain waves of people who are going through inner dance states. This is how we will gather certain types of data that will be valuable in the future. All right. So music instruments would be interesting. Like for me, I carry around everywhere I go. I have a really small MIDI controller, and I have my iPad, so I can control many instruments just through those. Like when I go home, and when I say home, there's a separate house where my kids live with their mom, and then I have my home in Maya. I have instruments scattered all across there, and they're not just synthesizers, analog and digital. There are also drums. I play a flute. I have several flutes actually. And so yeah, like the reason why I would love for you to take up music as part of your workspace is music is I don't want you to see music as just something you're going to be using in the journey space. When you learn music, you change your brain and you will also discover a language, not just music or sonic sound-based language, but the words would come because music has linguistic properties and language has musical properties. So to develop your brain, which should help to hold your mind together, spending a few minutes or an hour. I don't spend an hour on my musical instruments. I spend minutes every day. I make sure that I'm doing some kind of music every day. So it could start simple. It could be, let's say, okay, get a small drum machine you can carry in your pocket, or let's say on your unit, whether it be in your laptop or your phone or your iPad, you can look for a particular device that would be interesting. Like for me, for example, my favorite synthesizer is the Moog, and then I would play my Moogs because they're iOS programs already. Like in the sorry, now it's making a loud sound. So spending the hours would develop your brain, and you never know, this might in fact help you to develop your own playlisting skills, especially when you study the brain, you would also be studying frequencies. You would be studying electricity and magnetism. You can't study the brain without understanding how frequencies work, and you want to make that tactile. You want to have your hands on the frequencies. You don't want it conceptual, don't want it invisible. Frequencies do show up very, very largely already um, when we're working with music. Frequencies will make itself known. Right. So mixers, interfaces, and cables, they're like the thalamus of the brain and the white matter structures connecting with it. It's like the hub. So it's very important to have a good hub. We can teach you these more and more as we maybe lay low from the studies. When we're talking theory more, less, we can go more and more into these things. There's many options, and it's important before you buy anything, please research. If you have any questions, you can ask me actually directly. We can hold calls where you can ask such questions. Right now, it's really just important to mention it so you are aware of their existence. An audio interface would be a device that translates the sounds in the room into a digital format that would be read by your tablet, your computer, or your phone. Without an interface, you will not be able to store certain types of data. So there needs to be a kind of hub and translation device. All right. So when I brought up the Tetrad, it's really more to do with the software. Um, so, okay. Right now, I'm on Keynote, which is kind of PowerPoint for MacBooks, and want to share something about this, which might be interesting for you. So let's say, okay, you're a space holder, you're holding that. When I used to do like trainings, immersions, even basic workshops, really early on, here's what I would do. I would go to the bookstore. In the Philippines, it's usually like National Bookstore. And then I would buy me a whole bunch of Sharpies. Here, you call them bento pens. And then I would also buy illustration boards because way back in 2011, 2012, we were very, very low tech. Didn't have these big monitors, and our retreat centers are in nature. So I would buy these boards, illustration card boards. If not, then there's a certain kind of paper that's actually named after us. It's called Manila paper, which is the capital of the Philippines. Um, and what I would do is, as I speak, I'm always drawing things out, exactly what I'm doing now. All right. So um, it would start out very, very slow. I would draw things like that. And then later on, it would become like this. And then later on, it would become like this. But as I observed these becoming more and more like intricate and complex, there was something about how people were listening to my spoken words. And then as people were watching the images, because remember, like this is an inner dance context where people are exploding in emotions and energy. It's really important to then, when people open their eyes, okay, this is the ear, and then these are, when people open the eyes, sounds start to get mapped out. So already that hosts a kind of studioification or spoolification of the mind. That when you are dealing with sound, there is a decentering effect. And when you're not working with the image, people would really take a very slow time centering themselves back into thinking modality. So when you are able to work with images, it could be, let's say, like actual images. But I find like these baby-like, childlike drawings are very, very effective because it's like we're constructing and thinking together through the image and the sound, you know. When I use image, I actually use that a kind of as a kind of sonar where I'm able to hear you through both the words that I'm speaking. I can actually hear you through my own words. Like my words are coming from your own energy field. Because why else would I be saying this if you weren't there? I'd really just be having coffee here in the cafe and not, I'd be minding my own business. But when I'm in a conversation, when I turn on the sonar, I'm able to feel people. So the decentered sonar of using sound is very different from the image that brings clarity to the space. So I work with the eyes. I need to work with the eyes, and when people are laying down, I work with sound, and I work with touch. Okay, so the last call we talked about synesthesia. Please watch that. Please, please. All right. So w- the keynote or the PowerPoint brings obsolescence to those old illustration boards, is what I would say. Um, now, I work a lot with WhatsApp in my files, and this is very, very important for me. This for me is super duper amazing. So let's look at WhatsApp as a medium. WhatsApp brings into obsolescence this process before where I would have to talk to everyone in person. I know in many ways this is ideal. We see eye to eye, so on and so forth. But I don't want everyone to keep riding an airplane just to see me for an hour or or a week. I think it's so amazingly productive that you could be riding a bus. There are a lot of you who would just send me messages wherever you are, and I would just hear you even more so because I'm listening to you in my own space. So when I hear you, I can feel me. Okay, I'm not being overpowered by you. It's like you and me. I can hear you as me, speaking as me through you. For me, that is has always been my goal. So what this then brings forward is I'm able to download download the messages onto my devices. This is something I've been doing since the pandemic. I can take, let's say, so a lot of people would send me recordings, for example, of like a workshop of people sharing around. So what I would do is I would download these messages, and then I can either put them into files under categories. So then when I am doing research, when I'm conducting a talk, I would like to bring up, let's say, something very, very specific about someone going off into the galaxy, someone going into the womb. These are very general instances. This might be a scientific topic about synesthesia, about something within the cognitive sciences and body cognition. And then I know where they're at, meaning this is my mind. Like when I store things in my files, whatever gadget and application in that gadget I'm using, I know where they are. I have a whole system. Okay, it's not linear. It's very, very rhizomatic. I I'm pure flow. This is how I'm known around the world, but I'm actually quite anal. I am very, very form-based. I handle information very, very carefully, and rarely do I lose my positioning or my place in a large mapping. And my desire is to ever evolve into being able to be a functional person. Sorry. To learn to be in the world, to learn to operate, to work with students, with company employees, to work with governments. So um, these for me are quite important, especially because I would sometimes use those downloads to construct new playlists. I would take in, let's say, a specific deep sharing, and I might embed that in a playlist, and I might even send that to the same person without telling them that their voice is there, and it provides like another sort of experience. It's amazing. So right now I'm working with Good Notes, and that updates on the illustration boards. I used to have this remarkable writing tablet, but I had to give that up when the keyboard broke. I had a Cosmic Draw. Um, Wait, let me show the Cosmic Draw app. It could be okay. It could be whatever. It's really just a storehouse for images. Let me explain why this is useful. So I'm invited to a lot of these online talks, and I don't want to keep preparing for each talk, uh, primarily because it's time consuming. So it's just that a lot of the different topics are recurring, meaning I have to keep talking about the sleep cycle, right? I have to keep talking about the autonomic nervous system. So I would just refer to these. So if I'm really sleepy and I don't know what to say, literally I would just come up with the cosmic brush, and then I would go shop around. Okay, it's there. Okay, I have a picture of a brain. But also because I do have these apps that are um like showing the brain. Anyway, like I can use those. Just stating the instance where um it's really important to have a storehouse. And if you don't have that kind of thing, then there would be a challenge of always downloading, always rethinking up the topics. So I want to show you my good notes. And I'm excited about this because I can share my notes with you. Like I can literally like do a file share system, and I can collaborate with yeah, I can upload that on the online, and if people wanted to see, okay, Pi, I want to see your brain in the orange. Okay, well, here's where I'm thinking about talks, and some of these were like this is a talk I already did. This is a talk I already did. But when I start out, things are really, really messy. This is where I start out. Okay, what am I gonna talk about? I don't know. And then it ends up like this. So when I do open up the folder, um, wait, what am I trying to do? There. If I do open up a folder, all my study readings are here. So I still haven't populated like a lot of these because I just acquired this particular program lately. I used to work with my Remarkable tablet, like my reading materials were there. So basically, what this makes obsolete, let's go back to the yellow. What this makes obsolete is in the past when I would do trainings, my God, like I would literally have three notebooks. It was horrible. I would have a notebook that was like a scratch notebook where my raw ideas would be, and then that would need to translate into more careful um, outlines, and then this would then translate into carefully written sentences and paragraphs. So these tend to be the expensive ones, the pricey ones. These would be like the moleskin, and this would be a super cheap one that I would buy for like $1. This would be somewhere in the medium range. The price isn't really just because I wanted to spend money. It's because if I buy an expensive notebook, I would not dare soil this notebook with the raw ideas. So all of these I would just fill up. It would really, really look messy. But over here, it would need to be super duper organized and stellar and mandalic, meaning like I write very, very slow here and I write very, very fast here. But when I started to work with these particular apps, it changed my life completely. And I've only been at it for about a year and a half. But I noticed like when I conduct my trainings, I'm able to really weave my way through the notebooks of my mind. Meaning now I have how many is this? Nine, yeah, nine notebooks. And what really amazes me is when I have a particular idea or a particular thought, I would know where they go. Okay, I wouldn't waste my energy like messing up with note taking where like I don't know where I would put that and I would find that later on. Like I have a categorization system that really really helps me a lot. Like my energy actually stabilized more and more the more I'm able to do this. So especially when I took up this app. So I love this particular one, Good Notes. So this basically makes obsolete like all these notebooks. It saves me money in the long term because I really did spend too much money. Because if I'm going to be using my iPad anyway for music, I may as well use it for note taking. And a lot of you probably are more organized than I am in terms of these, but I wanted to at least share with you that when you do start to organize your own programs, and your own like space holding that these would be really interesting. I hope that inspires you and doesn't overwhelm you somehow. All right, so why did I put YouTube Premium here? What's that about? Like, what's the point of bringing up YouTube? Everyone watches YouTube. Okay, so this brings us back to study. And when I study, I told you that this is what I study. So what does this make obsolete? Like YouTube Premium. What does that make obsolete? So when I used to study, basically I'd look for the topics that would be relevant, like to me and to the inner dance space, like the autonomic nervous system, the endocrine system, the let's say the circadian rhythms, the hormones, neurotransmitters, brain waves, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot, right? And the philosophy, whether it be ontology, epistemology, like whatever. Like I could just keep going on. Hermeneutics, structuralism. I would basically download all of these onto my laptop using a YouTube downloader because I tend towards complex material. I would look for hard lectures that comes from Oxford or Harvard or Columbia University, or what's the leading edge um exploration there. I would look for the gaps as well within the science of, but first I need an introduction. So I would look for the lecture. I would study a lecture, and I would listen to that over and over again, which would be in sound. So even when I'm taking care of my kids, actually still studying often because I don't break my continuity, especially when my kids couldn't talk yet. But right now, my kids are so busy with their own lives that I'm happy to just keep studying. I'm freed up more. So I would download them onto my MacBook. And because technology was a little bit more simple back then, I would then move that into my device. So then I would have my phone, and then I would have my earplugs. I actually bought AirPods just last week, just so I don't need to deal with the wires. Um, so I'd be constantly studying, and then there would be the categories of each particular topic that I'm interested in. And literally, when you're doing trainings, when you're training people, you have to study, like literally. For me, the most effective way of speaking is by listening. And someone asked me like lately, I want to write a book. What's the best way to write? The best way to write is to read. That's how a structuralism works. What you put out is stuff that you integrated or took in. Okay. So when you're training, you have to study, and then you will output. Like you will, everything that you're integrating in your body will come out seamlessly in the right space. So I would download all of these onto my iPhone, and it was very time consuming, and I have to be quite organized. So I realized if I really just apply to YouTube Premium, where I think I pay like 10, is it a few dollars per month, then there won't be ads. And then I would look for the download option for YouTube Premium. So anything that I need to learn, I could just load my phone with certain things. So now my database isn't now the database of my MacBook. It's the database of the whole YouTube library, which is um, kind of infinite because I can never listen to everything in YouTube. So I would love for you to study, and I'm just using YouTube Premium as an example on how to build a relationship between your own um, yeah, memory banks and the memory banks of the world. Let's go into the next page. All right. So you all know the Life 1A website. I don't want to have to bring it up now. It's actually the same as my Cosmic Draw app. So Life 1A is uh it's like a wiki. It's a Wikipedia of all of the necessary topics that would ever, ever, ever come out of a training. And I think I do need to update that. But ideally, any concept that might be relevant within an inner dance framework would be within a wiki. So I got this amazing feedback from Gra, where one of the people that she's holding, don't remember where she's from. She works in the medical system, and then when she needs to explain inner dance to her colleagues, she would go into Life 1A, and then she would know how to describe inner dance. So the wiki seems to be able to help her map out things in her own mind. So I do work with Prezi, which is where you can store very PowerPoint type presentations online, and I can access the Prezis. But the Prezis still act as a more elegant wiki, and that's something I can just keep changing over time. So I'm still able to organize my space, especially when I'm traveling. But even when I'm conducting live trainings in Maya in our eco village, or online, I could still tap into. I definitely would tap still into Life 1A, and I'm constructing this for you. I don't actually need it as much. I'm doing it for you. For you to be able to map out um, maybe that was coming from me, that's what comes out in a training because I've been doing it for so long. Then when you start thinking about music, mind, unconscious, biology, and so on and so forth, these are all that would come up within the colors. But you can see how, like the website, the Prezi would also need to correspond with my personal wiki, which should be my Good Notes app, right? So I thought that would be interesting for you to think about. All right, next. So my noise is something ever present. If I'm still to look at my device, and what that makes obsolescent is beyond the musical instruments. I used to facilitate by looking for anything in the room that could make noise. Okay, I would walk around the garden, pick up leaves, and I would use that, scratching that in the floor. I would look for rocks and I would bang them together. I would use pillows in the space and I'd bang that in the across the room. So my noise is an important device that makes obsolete just looking for found objects in the room. You can access like planetary noise and keep that in your space. All right, so software, I'm gonna be going into a workflow on the DAW. I'd like to explain how I construct a workflow um on my Ableton and on my Logic Pro. So I recently moved into the use of DAW inside the in the iPad. So I want to share with you, if you're not yet invested or if you already have an iPad, I would love to focus our playlisting capacities within the tablet for those who would like something more affordable and portable. So what I used to do in my computer, I really just do here now. And I basically like love it. So what that makes that obsolete is I used to do things in DJ Pro, and when I used to do things in DJ Pro, basically what happened was I can't edit the music. I can't. I didn't like recording it live because I was rarely happy with it. I felt that there was so much more, like a narrative that could sense in the room, and I wanted to slow down time. So working with a digital audio workstation like Logic or Ableton would help you to construct a narrative. It would hold greater continuity. So I'm gonna go over that a little bit if there's time. And then plugins would be specific extra programs that would extend the library beyond just what's in the program. So let's say um, you're expanding your mind and you work with plugins. I want to work with like orchestral elements. Like when you watch very epic movies, you would have like the soundtrack, and a lot of the soundtracks are built on the cello, on the brass instruments, on the timpani. They can be very, very majestic. So if you want people to go into the movies of their lives, you would need something orchestral. And a lot of these won't really come from normally a basic DAW. So you'd look for that. That would be called a plug-in. Okay, just putting that in the space. A plug-in is something you'd get for free or buy from a separate company, and then you can load that onto a digital audio workstation, which would be the program. Uh, so when you choose a program, let's just call it a program so that we're not confusing. And any program would hold a specific dimension, and that dimension would hold workflow. And when you teach yourself that workflow, basically, um, yeah, when you teach yourself that workflow, then your body would be the one to learn that, not just your mind. Your body would do things automatically, whether it be live or in the studio. Your body would know what to do once you train it to just do it. Okay, so let me see. I want to make sure that my shared screen is sharing the sound. Okay, it is sharing the sound. Okay, so let me show my workflow on my iPad at least. Just let me know if you're not seeing my iPad. I'm on my iPad right now. The iPads nowadays work with a pencil, so I could decide to use my fingers or my a pencil. So you remember this instance where I talked about like WhatsApp, where I could download these. I don't want to open, otherwise you'll see my messages, and maybe there are people sending things that they don't want you to see. So I would download the WhatsApp message onto my iPad, and I actually can use my logic to cut things up. So for example, like this is
Hi,
oh sorry, yeah. Uh yes.
I don't see the iPad. At least I
Uh
don't see it.
yes, I realized I'm not actually sharing the screen. I was writing, but I wasn't sharing. Okay, so let's go back. This is what I was sharing. So this is the logic. Oh, no, not Keynote. Logic. Okay. So this is a plugin, for example. This is a synthesizer, and I'm addicted to this one particular synthesizer called the Moog. And then the sound is quite dark and intense. So that's a plugin. This is like another plugin. That's kind of like the Moog sound. It's very, very raw. And then I can move that over onto my program, which is called the digital audio workstation. So for example, if I wanted like one of the Moogs there, let's say the Model 15, which is a like a modular, then now the instrument is there. See? So I can play with it inside the thing. Um, okay, so I don't know how much I could demo because I'm never sure about these things when it's in Zoom. But what I wanted to at least show you theoretically would be, and I only found this out like lately. Let's say I downloaded all of these and I wanted to construct a playlist. Let's say the playlist that they laid down to, this is a workshop that happened in Barcelona last week, and they laid down on this one, a long way. So I entitled the long thing on a long way one and a long way two because there were two sharings. So if I wanted to share this onto my iPad, what I would do is you see these three buttons at the top. I would go into a slide over, and then no, not that. When I work with my logic, I can drag and drop a particular sharing onto here. Oh, why is that not working? Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, it's because it needs to be it needs to be an audio track. Okay, so now it's converting. Wait, I hear this noise. I think I need to shut this down and this down. Back here. So let's wait a little bit. Okay, so now Lily's sharing. I've never met Lily, but this is just sent to me. Now her sharing is there.
I felt this incredible, amazing journey, like astral, out of the body, out of here, but in the body as well.
Okay, so that's her sharing. And I actually hear this Moog here. So let's open this Moog. That's interesting. Let's try to create like a rhythm within it. What do I do? All right, so I need to close this and maybe come up with a simple arpeggio. See if this works. Uh, okay, so I think
This incredible, amazing journey, like this.
just a moment. This is what I mean about like not able to make these work. There, maybe it's the volume. No. Anyway. Anyway, so I'm not in the mood to be too technical today, but I want to just give you the gist. So let's say I have this voice that's ongoing. Actually, here's a way. Wait, let me just get rid of the arpeggio. Let's see if the thing's there.
Computer that having a software update.
No, let me just look for an audio patch then. Okay, so I could just shop around for different things that's too much. Um, it's like I'm let's say hypothetically looking for a sound that matches what the voice is talking about. Um, hmm. Let's maybe base it on the pads. What about this? Okay, so I don't like that, but let's just go for it. So I drag that here. It doesn't drag because I think I need to open something to hold that. I see. Okay, this is hard. Anyway, maybe let me just do a shortcut. Let me just drag a long way here, which is the actual playlist itself. This is not a good instance. I'll tell you why later, but just for the sake of being able to play something. So now the playlist is there on top or underneath the actual experience of someone laying down on it. So when I press play, they're going together.
I felt this incredible, amazing journey, like astral, out of the body, out of here, but in the body as well. And I felt basically like on a computer that having.
So let's say I'm okay with that, and maybe I would just add on other. I'm just thinking out loud. Like I'm sharing this not because I perfected it, but I'm sharing this because this is where I see myself working. This is going to be my workflow on to the next year. Let's say, okay, I want the guy sharing because the woman just shared. So let's say I would playlist him onto the timeline. Um, so this is maybe just one way I would conduct a workflow. I want to demonstrate how I have been working. That's quite different. So let's say Omer is there.
Immediately felt that I snapped out of my body.
Okay, so sound-wise, you're hearing two things already. You're hearing like this one, which is the playlist that I constructed using a different program on my laptop, like last July. I remember because that was my birthday playlist. And then this particular one is the Moog one, if you remember, like this Model 15, this modular synthesizer that's just going off on its own. So let's say oh, sorry, no, I didn't mean to close that. Open up again. And I'm still getting used to work with an iPad. So now I have a playlist already. I have like 4 things happening at the same time is what I want to say.
Like immediately felt.
So here's where I would construct a workflow that's kind of inner dancey. What I would do, this is what I normally do. I would open anything that can control the tempo, which is the speed. So remember how we've gone over the 12 stages model, or the 5 stages of the circadian rhythms. Basically, what I'm doing here is I'm changing the tempo. So I basically can already work on a design process. So if and when I want to slow down or when I speed up, this is how I would basically like do it. I want to show how I'm doing that in Ableton. So let's say I think I need to get rid of this keynote. Yeah. I hope these are interesting for you. So this is my Ableton, and before I might even load anything up, um, okay, so what I would do is I'd go into the timeline and uh, this is the tempo, basically. It slows down or it goes faster. So there's a way in which I can automate. Wait, how do you automate? Automate is like here. And then when I open this up, um, it's still not automated. Wait, where's the automation? Like view. There, automation mode. All right, so it's a very, very simple concept. So let's say I construct a long song. I basically can control the tempo, which is the rhythm, even before I do anything else. So whatever instruments that I put over on top of this later on, the program's job is to synchronize the beats of everything that might have rhythmicity or tempo. So when I am slowing down or speeding up, I can actually predetermine that even before I start. So what I want to say is when I look for a program, I want to work with the 12 stages model, or I can destroy that model. I can more or less construct a model that might look like this, or it might look like this. And this is basically built on the rhythm, which, as you well know, can influence the heartbeat, which can then influence the breathing patterns and the brainwave activity. Brain, breath, blood are co acting with each other. So basically, my bottom line is when I construct a workflow, I can already make a sketch. Even before I have any particular idea, I would start out with understanding what's the energy. So let's say I'm set to construct a sleep playlist. If I'm going to construct a sleep playlist, I already have in mind um, a certain wave that I might start slow, and then I might have a build up, but I would go slow, and then I might have I can see the wave in my mind because I'm experimenting with what kind of REM state would I like for this particular sleep playlist that might be different from another sleep playlist. I could predetermine, okay, I'd like this to be 3 hours long, or I'd like it to be 1 hour long. I could already construct in the program the predetermined duration um, and the wave. You see, so I start with the wave even before I put on any instrument. I might not have a theme, I not have any ideas in mind, but I can already see the playlist prior. And when people send me their programs, I can also see their wave because the waves in the programs are very, very visual. Okay, so that's it. I think that's my yellow sharing today. I don't know if this was useful for you, but I enjoyed preparing. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas or insights, realizations, I'll be really happy to hear. If there are long-term space holders here and trainers here, I would love for you to also share how you emerged from the energy space and found a constructivism, like a structuralism. What helps you to translate energy states into um like yeah, like libraries and file systems and whatnot. Thank you.
I would like to share
Yes,
here.
Ines.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Ines. I live in Dubai. From Middle East. I work with Floor. First, thank you so much for all the wisdom that you are sharing with us, all the knowledge. I'm from Lebanon, and the last 3 weeks since we started this term and working with the chakras, the war started in my country, and we all know that there's a shift, a big shift that's happening now in the Middle East, moving us into a higher consciousness. And the inner dance helped me so much during this year, not only to dig deeper into a new knowledge, but also to embody all this knowledge. And the last 2 weeks, when we started working with the sacred chakra, something very interesting happened to me with the phenomenology, which is when you were talking about where in which dimension we are now, to ask ourselves what dimension I live in now. And with all the news that's happening, with the speed of the events that's happening as well, I felt like I'm moving in the timeline, from timeline to timeline, like a pendulum going from root to sacred, also to see the separation down, then go to the to purple, to oneness. And it's not easy to live this, because I'm seeing like everything, something is building up, a new energy is waiting to come out, and on the same time everything is destroying. My family joined me the last 2 weeks. They lost everything in there, and it wasn't easy in the beginning for me, but yet I was trying to just centralize myself and to be in the heart most of the time, and try to hold the space, for me, to hold the space for them. And thank you for bringing this topic today with the hold the space. This summarize a lot in the few in my experience, the few last weeks. So the black hole I was living it actually, with all what's happening. And yeah, that's it. I just want to share this, because it summarized all the experience of inner dance, because every session and every call we have with you, Pi, I feel like I'm not only reaching another level of growth. No, it's more than that. It's embodying and living the energy in the body. Be the element itself. So that's it.
Oh my God, I love this sharing so much. The other yellow call, I brought up the Orient, specifically the Middle East, as a source of wisdom and embodiment that brings the the conversation between the East and the West into a middle space. Particularly where power and knowledge are going into these dynamics like all the time. But like why I love your sharing so much is like when I go through chaos and turmoil, for me, that's usually a sign where a much greater stability is about to come. And that may not happen for some people. They may just end up like deciding to spiral downwards, but there's something in a lot of us intuitively, even as we were children, that the more we spiral down, the more we're also like going up. And that can only happen within a body that's able to trust. I think if you lose trust isn't just an emotion, it's a way of seeing ahead and before the things that may not be so clear now. So as you were speaking, what I was enjoying and feeling is the sense of like that right now the ground is so unstable, the earth is shaking, and I'm so happy to hear from a Lebanese today as the first sharing. But like there's an anchoring there, like how you speak from the orange. You yourself, you're anchoring the energy just by being in the room through your perception, your love, your compassion, your forgiveness, your seeing. You're just being in the room, seeing from that orange space already heals the room. Even though you look around and it just seems like everything is going all over the place. Usually the greater the change, the more the healing. And then the greater the stagnation, the more things get stuck. So the universe is choosing some of these areas to allow change to happen. But if no one was there to anchor, um, then it would really just go its own way, you know, like fire and water are like that. There are moments where we need to be fire. When we're too water, we're just gonna flow with whatever resonance is held. The role of fire is to hold the form. It goes upwards, water tends down. So maybe you're because you are holding water, that water can now hold fire. So the study topic, you know, like when there's emotions, anger, reactions, and when we speak about the kind of war that happens in the Middle East, it's very reactive. Like people are reacting to a past reaction that reacted to a reaction that came before that reaction. It's pretty much like you started it. You punched me in the face, and so I'm gonna hit you back and I'm gonna throw bombs at you. It just doesn't end. It's gotta end somewhere. When you're in that level of emotionality and reactivity, there has to be also the indigo. But it's very, very easy to lose one's mind when there's so much emotion. So all the more would we not need it, you know? Like in the last yellow call, I brought up Edward Said, a Palestinian thinker who brought the idea of Orientalism to us. And he was, you know, he was a Columbia professor. He was one of the most amazing post-colonial theorists of his time, literature, structuralism, and he was so cool. You know, at the height of the war, the Palestinian war, he was just there formulating, purely seeing the other through the mirror. And he got his voice heard, you know. He was able to speak about the Western ego that tries to hegemonize how it normally sees the Middle Easterner as like violent, as strange, as, you know, like we need to see eye to eye. Like when I think of Israel and Palestine. I think of Isaac and Ishmael. These are two eyes. They're not seeing eye to eye. They're the two brothers. There has to be like the third eye, and for me, that's a yellow point. The third chakra is the Hegelian synthesis. It's to look at the thesis and the antithesis. Where would the synthesis come from in all these wars, in all these points of conflict? And that needs to be interiority in the beginning. It needs to be internalized, no matter what's happening. It could be the hurricane in Florida, it could be climate change, it could be this and that. There has to be the eye in the storm that is the most still and the most calm. So I think that's what's so interesting about the inner dance. The more noisy it gets, we actually feel the silence, right? That's the kind of spiritual work that's coming now. The more the body is moving, the more you feel still. So to have someone speak from Lebanon now with so much wisdom, and even in your voice, there's this element of slowness and calm that's also within the turbulence. I feel anchored just listening to you. So thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Oscar is here from Mexico.
Hi, Pi. Hi, everyone. Wow, so many ingredients has been placed in the plate before I was able to share. I think that this intervention from Inas was bringing even more things that was about her topic and her really. Thank you so much, Inas, for again for the sharing and it makes me realize a phrase that I has been catching few things lately. That is, of course, part of these profound lectures and dialogues. And I want to thank you, Pai, because in these two callings for Yellow, it has been going deep and different branches, and not just philosophical, also technical, and also, yes, planting perspective from where you are driving now and how you move, which is always inspirational. Well, I would like to say a few things that maybe you can contribute to myself in the way that I integrate in these two callings. I prefer to talk in this global perception because I think that these both callings are really important to see both and not just seeing one. Well, this phrase that I was catching before is the purpose of knowledge is to bring the consciousness to realize that the mind really don't know. So if we are not bringing in the position through knowledge and understanding that we really don't know, it is phrase say that we are not completing the journey in order to go to a next sphere of what knowledge and power means. Also, this change from power to presence, which is the movements of the third into the floor, if we see this in a linear way. Even also commenting that, mandala, we see the mandala, and I'm starting just lately to understanding a bit more the mandala system. But at the same time, it's a 3D construction that even have an 8 point in some place that is integrating and becoming also this word that has been coming a lot, synthesis or synthesis, maybe in English is the same than Spanish. So I want to bring this thought that you were through the calling you were inspiring. It was to me like a sophisticated empirism as a biological metaconsciousness with a few thousand years of DNA evolution that we are right now sit down to thinking, okay, this is the next lab. All these resources are here, all these energies are here, all this intelligence for in under the air, out there of the atmosphere, and we need to. I don't know if we need, but maybe it's my way to express in the way that I want to communicate how there's an option to becoming more stabilized in order to see as a facilitator of these kind of spaces, we can understand the possibilities that are offered, that are presented, not just from our very display as a facilitator, Is also the peace and the space, the confidence, and this trust that we are also requiring a lot of in the participants, how we can, as a facilitator, also be an emanation, a humble emanation of this yellow that is already going through the process of synthesis and not trying to demonstrate that who is the holder, who is the space holder, and what is my particular place to holding but not holding. So this dichotomy that sometimes is part of the dialogue in the process of becoming facilitator with the space. This word that you mentioned a few times last, a negotiation with the space. What is the new terminology that we are ready to embody to dialogue with the space and holding the space and the characteristics of these self-aware dynamics that they will start to, from within the participant and from within us, is if also we are in similar resonance with the space. So, and also it was bringing me this idea that for sure the yellow one, including theoretically in the color, in the orange and in the red, is kind of, so what's important to me to see this assumption of these two empirism and also the strength of creation and this force now in a way where having such a perspective is not self-destructive. Yeah, how the third color also is about in somehow dynamizing the self-conservation some way. Yeah, and self energy saving. And the other thing is that maybe this concept has nothing to do with the calling, but to me was coming and jumping and dealing with a concept that is coming from a guy called Abdi, ABDJ. And he was explaining in his theory why we supposed to perceive ourselves as a five-dimensional beings in a three-dimensional biology. And with all these many layers, that is even more we know. But he trying to explain this in this way, that the fourth and the fifth dimension, we are more easy to understand this if we just simplify this as a attention and intention. And in these two dynamics of the human consciousness that make us very particular beings as intelligent beings, because we understand that the kind of attention that we keep is the kind of hologram that we display also as a space holder. When you mention Pi, well, the kind of observer that's participating in the space. So the consciousness that we are holding, or the inner dialogue, the belief system, the enthusiasm, the new concepts, and all these paths are open right now through this study and these frontiers, how this perception is already dialoguing with what I'm coming to the space that I'm pretending to hold in a certain way. And also intention and also the attention. And it's very interesting to perceive because also we can be fully through that two activities. With attention, we can actually going out of the body, and with intention too. It's very interesting, this concept, and I want to put it here because as a facilitator, the intention and attention is one of the most important resources, and more than the knowledge, the playlist, everything is important, but I feel that these elements are really one of the key power if we are talking about yellow in his primary way and his basic concept of being able to express individuation with sensitivity and self learning mechanism also through the experience. So maybe it was many things at the same time, but I'm happy to share what I have in my plate.
It is a lot.
So thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a lot of thoughts, but I don't want to speak any now because then we would need another hour to go over those. So thank you. It's so rich. Gra, Elfinus.
Hi. I came really, really late. I was just finishing another call. But also feeling what is in the room, what is in my yellow, or what has been in my yellow this past week. And also maybe how my journey within the yellow has been since I began to be exposed to a mandala way of living life or reading life, also how to read life through the lenses of the mandala. And I see now like how there's been this wave always between the power of the self or the individual, the person, and the power of the collective. So I've been through waves of going through various processes inside and outside of getting in touch with what is that inner power, and so many moments in which you're just not doing anything and you feel so much power, and then there's something that happens and shifts into the way you talk to people, the way you answer, the way you walk, the way you are on earth when you are there feeling that power. And I feel that this is a very interesting thing that helped me heal something regarding my way of dealing with all of the hardship that there is in the world, all of this inequality, all of that war. It helped me in a way center something, make peace also with things, and maybe arriving at some objectivity, and how being objective can sometimes help us deal with the subjective. And I see also how there has been a lot of growth into what is it that I want to do and how is it that I want to do. So it's also related maybe a bit with technology and how that brain that deals with gadgets, that brain that has learned how to deal with an iPad or something, it has some kind of tricky magic there that helped me grow into some sort of objectivity. I think it's been 2 weeks that I've been going into some waves, and I've recently found out that the word self-care has actually some sort of roots in the Black empowerment movement in the 60s and the 70s in the US. And it came from Audre Lorde, a poet and an activist. And her notion of it was actually like, you need to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. So the collective, you need to be there for the collective, but you need to be whole. You need to be all that you are so the collective can change with you. And this, for me, touched so beautifully in many senses, because there is a very capitalistic, or I don't know if that is the word, but there is a very individualistic way of seeing self-care in a very marketized way of like, you need to be the best of that you are, you need to be the best version of yourself, and all of these retreats and things that we've been doing. But we never actually talk about why is it that we are doing all of this inner transformation. And sometimes it can look like, am I doing this just for myself? But because we lack the thing that we're doing this actually for the world. And every small thing that we do inside will also maybe, or most likely, possibly, do great changes in a very chaotic butterfly effect on the world. So there's a lot of my anxiety has healed from that. And nowadays, I think it's been 2 weeks that I've been really saying this in my own trainings. Like when people ask me about the sciences and all of the discourse in inner dance, and what is the purpose of it, and how does that talk to the way that we facilitate things in the room? Why is it that this is different from another discourse that uses transmission as a main pillar? And for me, one of the things that I came to notice is that this discourse or this discursivity has some sort of helped me see that we are coming into a space where spirituality is everywhere and power is everywhere, and no matter what your background is, if you are from Africa, if you are from South America, if you're a Muslim, if you are a Buddhist, you can actually come to an inner dance circle. And I think we are arriving at a way of reaching out to this, that no matter what your past beliefs are, you can still come and you are going to be seen. You are going to explore yourself as consciousness in a room as well. So when asked this week, like, okay, what is this facilitation and why is this? What is it that we do? For me, we try or we look for spaces to create these spaces, things that we don't see out there, like in the UN. I don't know if those guys, they are actually seen for what they are. So it will be amazing to be actually holding space for so many different cultures in a way that we can meet. There's a center, and I feel that this is maybe when yellow connects a little bit with green. How is it that we come into a center and power is there, and discourse is there, and change, evolution, all of this, it's all part. And yeah, so maybe my yellow process this week was this, to remind myself that um, holding space for me maybe is that now at this moment in time, many cultures coming together, and there is no belief system that is better than anyone else, and there is objectivity there. So thank you so much.
Wow, yeah, that's true. Thank you. I enjoyed listening to Oscar and then to Gra. I think it's connected, what you guys shared. It's the same thing from different dimensions. But I could really, really resonate. And I think that's really defines the yellow. The yellow for me is one of the most challenging colors. It's the most powerful, yet it's the most wounded. And people don't know it. Sometimes we're over motivated. Like a lot of people are able to achieve so much because they don't actually love themselves. They're trying to hide their lack of self-esteem and self-worth and self-love through self-efficacy, right? Because it's easier to just be powerful, to be able to achieve, to succeed. But it's because it's coming from maybe possible childhood experiences of not having been seen, not having been heard. So they're still talking to those people who didn't see them. That there are these ways. Look at me now, I told you so, and this and that. Um, so when we do go into the orange, we do let go momentarily of the yellow, where the doing it decreases, and we do feel guilty in today's world when you're not doing anything. You're being a bum, you're being useless, you could be doing more. But sometimes the less you do, the more gets done. But a powerful yellow does arise from that, not having to do it out of obligation. I think one of the most wounded yellows is doing things for the sake of doing it because of indebtedness, because let's say I owe them, they gave me life. It's like that's indebtedness. And there are cultures that have great sense of debt. Like in the Filipino, we call it utang na loob, like I owe you. So I'm doing it just for the sake of doing it because I feel obliged, but I'm not actually doing it because I'm free to do it. It's because I'm expected to do it. So a lot of people are exhausted in the yellow because they're not doing it because they really are doing it out of heart. Um, so yeah, something needs to be worked on in this. And I think people are experiencing so much power over the internet, especially. They're absorbing information. You can there are levels of addiction there and narcissism where I can get things faster, bigger, and easier through my power, but without a real anchoring in the. I guess now we can speak colors. In the orange and in the green, you can only blue yourself so much, right? Right. So the yellow is very, very key. If we heal the yellow, a lot will be healed. So there's then this almost opposing relationship between the in-depth orange that goes into the void, the messy, the womb space. And then you're supposed to arise in the yellow. Like, how do you even balance that out? How does that balance out? How does that stabilize? Like, in reflection to what Gra shared, like I came to a point where I was doing so much healing work all across the world. I was traveling through all these countries, um, and it was getting quite intense. But I could see how I was in this spiral, and I could hold space well enough in the inner dance sense, but I wasn't functional. I was really good at putting the Molotov cocktail, the atom bomb, the intercontinental ballistic missile in spaces. People would explode and I would be in the center of the room, and there was a lot of power there. There's a lot of efficacy. If I wanted to be a gazillionaire, I would have just kept doing that and doing that and doing that. But I could see what was happening in my ego and also in my emotional, energetic body. So there was a really big commitment that had to be made. It wasn't mine. It was belonging to the consciousness itself, like anchoring. And I realized then and there how I could help others was not merely through the words that I would speak or through like my hands or the energy. It had to be through demonstration. It had to be through demonstration. I wanted to demonstrate to the world that out of this could be growth, not just the involution of going deep, deep, deep. How deep can you go? Just keep going deep. Can we go even deeper now? Can we even go deeper than the deepest, deepest, deep, deep, deep? I also wanted to surface. I also wanted to arise, not just keep falling down repeatedly, which could give me a lot of power if I wanted to, because the ones below me laying down on the floor were all like doing that. So I realized then and there I could help people through demonstration that if I am still here in the world intact, I'm functional, my mind's working, I haven't lost my language, I haven't destroyed my memory centers. In fact, I'm able to retain information in a way that's integrative, that's helpful, that's philosophical, that's not just mine, that's coming from like a global space. Then I realized I can help do that, that I could simply be a testament that this energy will bring you into productivity, into a healthy, productive yellow. So now I'm back in the world. I'm a taxpayer. I have kids. I zip in and out of worlds, and I travel. And we're conducting these projects with government, schools, companies, and whatnot. Um, I think that would really do it. So the the crux point, the transition to that, it's very tricky because when you do come into the spiraling motion, which is emotion, it's very easy to go into a self-judgment that I'm not good enough, I'm too small, who am I in the first place? I can't do it. So let's do a screen on this because it's good to do a screen on this. Yeah, it's sharing. Okay, so who are you would be a repetitive, recursive questions asked in workshops all around the world. Who am I anyway? How long can I keep asking that question where an actual answer would arise? In structuralism, or what post-structuralism did was it uh deconstructed this so much, particularly through deconstruction, that when you define a word, let's say, what is your name? One of our favorite words in Maya is Bob. Let's say, how do you define a Bob? Let's say your Bob, or let's say concept like baby, that's like a concept or a word. How you would define a baby is by uttering more and more and more words. So a definition is defined by more definitions, on and on and on. That's deconstruction. at work. So when you define yourself as I say, I'm Oscar, I'm Gra, I'm Pai, I am Paula, I am Anahata, I'm Italy, I am it just keeps going on and on. It's loopy, it's circular, it will never end. So if the grand color is the violet, which is like I am, and in the Philippines, the ancient name of the Philippines is actually this. Don't know if you see the patterns there. We're Mayans, Mayans here. Just wanted to share that as I'm streaming from here. What is the answer to that? Like a lot of people have a hard time with I'm already there. That's why I had to bring up the definition of the burning bush name, the God, as that, because that at least is acceptable for a lot of people. When kind of ideal is spoken, I am dot dot dot, whether you say I am courage, I am wisdom, I am abundance. When you have to admit to the reality that I'm not there yet, there has to be some mode of compassion, especially when you are going through the stages, especially what some people might call the black hole, the orange, the dark night, the challenges, and so on and so forth. It takes quite a trusting mind to perceive that the solutions are always hiding in the problems, and that there are people who see the solutions. That's what they see. I am the type of person who sees a problem, and I always see that as solutions. Like the doctor that we work with, Dr. Paredes, when he treats people with this, he just simply spells it differently. Oh, you have cancer. I see. Cancer is the answer. There was a problem to begin with, and the cancer is actually the solution to what you haven't been looking at. So that is tantamount to change. Anyone who can see things in that way already perceives that there is no such thing as death in the normal sense. So what is acceptable for people, if they're working with these ideals, these, let's say, religious, moral, political ideals, that you need to be that courageous, abundant, and when you're not that yet, then what you would work with is the comparison, the negotiation, the valuation. But I'm not that, I don't have that, like whatever it is, like in the colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am not that would be there. I am confused, or I don't have knowledge. I'm not understood. No one loves me. I can't do it. I'm stuck. I'm not free, and I'm poor. So if oops, that's really dirty. So at the very least, if you can't handle the I am, what we can handle at least is we're getting there. Like any artist would know that. Let's say you're painting something, or maybe you're a musician and you're working on an album. You don't really look at the body of work while it's still in the becoming. But a true artist, even before like the first note is played, for a painter, even before an image comes, the first dot that is made already is, like you were I'm married to someone from Finland, and we like to say she was finished before she even started. Even as you conduct the first note, the whole song is already there if you are trusting, and if you do have that ability to see the solutions are hiding in every problem. The painting was finished even when the first dot was even before it's made. Like the first brush stroke leads to all the other brush strokes, which all come from perfection. So people can handle this, and this is what makes yellow not um, problematic. It is, in fact, very, very powerful if at least perspective is there. So I understand in my own body how I actually needed to clarify this inside myself, because always there's judgment in the world. It's looking at you, and you're a painting and you're a song, you're an album, but I'm not finished yet, right? Let's say you were born into a world and they expected you to be perfect. um I guess the best family system would be anyone who's born, they're perfect to begin with, and they're perfect all the way to the end. If we could self-parent ourselves and we could parent others through that mirroring process, do that by demonstration, be intact, like be here. Don't try to get away, don't escape, don't invalidate the world, don't say, okay, science or spirituality. It's like it's always fighting, always these competitions. Yellow is about valuation. It's about what is the most important, what is the highest. But from an inner dance perspective, always the but. What inner dance does is state that, but what if everyone is the most important? And what if every word was the most important? What if every day was the most important? What if every space was the most important? We would cease to invalidate any other. We would simply see this holographic nature where, so yeah, we would buy ourselves time when we create that kind of space. And that's a very, very different yellow indeed. Like through the Middle Ages, one of the greatest mysteries and pilgrimages that was the first science. I think this deserves another screen share. Share, share. Oh, I think maybe I didn't even share the. Yeah, I am screen sharing, and you know well enough already that if I'm not, here's the first science. Actually, this is amazing. Let's say chemistry deals with the understanding of the the basic building blocks of the universe and of the earth. But the etymology of the word chemistry actually comes from the Middle East. It comes from uh, alchem, from Egypt. Um, and the obsession of the first chemists was very yellow indeed. They were obsessed about converting matter, mostly lead, into gold. And what is gold? How do you create gold? How do you actually make gold? Like, there were even philosophers and scientists that would take urine, put it into a bottle and mix stuff with it, hoping that it would turn to gold. What kind of, I don't know. For me, gold is a color. It is a vibration. It's not hard to make gold. It's very, very easy. It's to um it's to combine two basic frequencies. And what are those? If you know your color chart, it's yellow and white. That's it. Simple. How do you construct gold? How do you create gold? It's yellow and white. So there has to be some kind of conversion process. I would kind of beg to differ. For me, gold comes from converting darkness into light. I think that is the true nature of alchemy, if we were to balance that out in a triadic system, which is really, really yellow. So I don't know. I think there's something about the colors that's coming clear more and more in this last 3 months. I know it through my own body. I can feel that 2025 is going to be a very, very powerful yet critical year. And I'm glad that we are right now in the last months together, paving the way, saying thank you to what has been. We were that, we also are not that, yet we're not invalidating what we're not. We're also becoming what we haven't been, but already kind of are. Confusing as it may be, inner dance is the space in between. We are not what we are not, yet not invalidate that we are also that. That's what we were. We also have that inside of us, and we are also what we haven't been, but we are that too. So we are the transition point. We are the space in between. And I'm glad that that might not actually ever end. Because if you try to think about true embodiment, if you are infinite, would you ever finish your project? Would you like to finish? Then you may as well just make a small sound like poof, I'm done. I'm out of here. This is boring already. I'm just gonna become the cosmos. Maybe you can do that, but you didn't. You're here. You're in this project. So enjoyment, and maybe even the harder it gets, we didn't design this to be easy. It's supposed to be enjoyable in that way. Anyone else? We're at the 3-hour mark, but just in case, like there's some lingering thoughts. No, I think that's good. Let's say thank you already. Please watch the first call. It is possibly one of the most important calls that we have done in the entire year. And it's I sometimes call it like a parent call. And when the parents come together and the conditions are right, it's gonna make babies. So I feel some of the calls, you converge with them, they're going to birth more babies. And that might happen spontaneously. You're in the bathroom, you're driving your car, and suddenly look, like poof, there's like an insight. I get it. Yeah, that could be 10 years from now. I get it. That's what they're, and then you write it down, and it just keeps giving birth and birth, and keeps getting older and older, this baby that you're, I think one of the worst experiences, or let's say painful, is to be pregnant. It's like I've got all this potential. It could be more and more. And it's beautiful, like when I hear spiritual people, like I see it in Gra, I see it in myself, I see it in others. We over express the word actually. Why do we keep doing that? What's the opposite of actual? It's potential. So potentiality is like pregnant. And for those who have gotten pregnant, it's a beautiful experience, but can you imagine living your whole life pregnant? You're not giving birth. It's like, it's like the baby's there and it's not coming out. And I got this big belly and it's like big as the whole world. You deserve to give birth, and you are your own mother and you are your own baby. That doesn't need to happen like tomorrow. There's a certain attitude. You need to be almost this. You got this attitude that it's just now. It's just now, and I take it a day at a time. And the next day will be another day. So hold that space, and yeah, thank you. See you on the other side. So if you can unmute, keep the conversation going. Gracias. Salamat.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias,
you.
gracias, buenas
Gracias, muchas
noches.
gracias. Buenas
Obrigada.
noches.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Adiós.
Thank
Chao,
you, everybody.
gracias.
Hooroo.
Gracias. Gracias.
Thank you. Bye.